stations across the land, iHeartRadio, JoePags.com, also Newsmax TV. It's the Joe Pags Show. Really glad to have you here. And really glad to have on the line with us today, it's Gregory Wrightstone. He is the author of a book called Inconvenient Facts. Greg, how are you?
Outstanding. Good to talk to you.
Really glad to have you on the program. Inconvenient Facts is a book that's out right now. It obviously is a play on the inconvenient truth, which, of course, we're told is the truth. In fact, Al Gore told us a long time ago the debate is over. And he said it very vehemently, I guess as vehemently as Al Gore can. So, therefore, we must believe that the polarized cap is melting, that New York City will be underwater by 2014. Oh, whoops, I'm sorry. It's 2018. I guess it didn't happen. That we're going to be struggling and the wildlife is going to die and cats and dogs will be getting married. We were told this is fact. You can't even question it. How dare you write such a book?
Yeah, well, there's more than 3% of scientists that disagree with Al Gore, I can tell you that.
97%. No, we're told it's 97%, Greg. So help me out here. Where did he get that number, first of all, and what's the real number?
Yeah, actually, I devote an entire chapter to my book to that. That was from a study by John Cook, who runs it's called Skeptical Science. It's an outrageous alarmist website. Okay. And according to him, he's got 5 layers of classification of what you believe. I would be considered as part of the consensus because I believe that the increasing CO2 is adding some warming to the Earth. It has to. But I just don't think it's very meaningful, and it's overwhelmed by the natural forces. But yet he would include me in that 7% consensus. So it's a bunch of poppycock, and there have been other polls out there.
Right.
The Oregon poll was the biggest. 35,000 degreed scientists contest the alarmist contention of human-caused CO2.
So at the end of the day, what you have is a consensus, we're told by Al Gore and his ilk, 97%, and this is the first time I've ever heard in my life that in that 97% are people like you who don't believe that it's doing anything that's of any consequence and that we're not, in fact, ruining the world because we agree that increased carbon emissions will warm us up a little bit.
Right. And it would be like saying if you would lump people that opposed abortion except by rape.
Right.
And lump them into this broad consensus on opposing abortion. It'd be the same thing. I'm not part of that 90. I don't believe that human-caused warming is going to lead to horrible consequences.
I think that's a great comparison. I've not heard that comparison before, but you're right. If there's somebody out there who says, hey, I am completely pro-life unless the mother's life is at risk, right, then they would say, well, look, he clearly thinks abortion is okay.
Right. I'm not the first one to come up with that analogy. I like to use it because I think it's very apropos.
Right.
And it's very similar. And I've been speaking to large groups of scientists, mainly geologists, because I'm a geologist. I spoke down in Morgantown, West Virginia, not that long ago, and the overwhelming response were people coming up to me after the talk and shaking my hand vigorously, thanking me for doing this and having the courage to do it. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, but there's a little bit of a delay, so I don't want to talk over you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a great body of scientists out there that believe as I do. Some of them are scared to speak out because they'll be like me. They're going to come after me with the long knives. I get abused pretty good. Everything I have in the book is science and fact-based. I have 14 pages of references in the back. There's not one thing that someone's pointed to says it's factually incorrect. So, but I wrote this book targeting non-scientists. Most other climate change books have like 6 pages of text and then a black and white graph.
Right.
My book is extremely easy to read, and it's for non-scientists.
It is Gregory R. Wrightstone, Wrightstone, Greg Wrightstone. He is a geologist, so a scientist, and he's got his book out called Inconvenient Facts that I want you to go and get. He references it like crazy. This is the kind of book that the left hates because they really can't, come up with any sort of counter to it or rebut the facts. Inconvenientfacts.xyz is the website. Go there, and the book is out right now. Let me just throw a few things against the wall and let me get your reaction to it. University of East Anglia, we know, lied in emails to pretend there was data that wasn't there. When they were asked to show the data, they said they lost the data because they moved from one office to the other, and I don't know, they lost a box of data. I guess it wasn't electronically filed somehow. We have no idea what the temperature was where we're sitting right now 1,500 years ago, no clue. So we don't really know what the cycles were. We know there were 2, if not 3, ice ages, and somehow the ice melted. So it seems to be that we live on a planet that there are cycles where things get really, really cold, and they get really, really warm. And as much as we know a little bit what the forecast is going to be tomorrow, we don't really know why these things keep on happening. And the idea that somehow my Cadillac Escalade is causing the warming today, yet when the first ice age melted, there was no, thought of, I don't even think human beings, much less Escalades. So how is it that we're where we are today? First of all, is everything that I just said fact? And if we take it that it is true somehow, how did these people pull the wool over everybody's eyes on planet Earth?
Yeah, well, they take a kernel of truth sometimes and twist it into something completely different. But when you were talking about temperature, the one truth about temperature is the constant about temperature is it's never constant. It's going up and down and up and down and up and down. And they want your listeners and your viewers here to believe that hundreds of millions of years of temperature drivers suddenly ceased at the beginning of the 20th century.
Right.
Come on, that's just not the way it works. And if you look back 10,000 years to the end of the last ice age, I noted in the book, we got Greenland ice core data. I noted 9 other similar warming trends to what we're in, and 5 of those 9 had a higher rate of warming. So we're not in a period that's unusual or unprecedented. And in fact, the warming trend we're in right now, we know what year it started. It was the year 1695.
Wow.
I don't think there were any SUVs or Indian coal-fired plants.
Right.
And that was in the middle of what was called the Maunder Minimum, the depths of the Little Ice Age, which was horrendous. 600,000 people died in 1 year in France.
Oh.
Half the population of Iceland perished. One of the big things in the book, and I loved it, was the relationship between the rise of civilizations and technology and temperature. When it's warm, your population, your subjects.
It's such a great point. I have to jump in on that, Greg. And again, it's Gregory Wrightstone with a W. Go and get his book. It's called Inconvenient Facts. What a great point. Do we really? It's like these dorks who are pushing this idea of global warming, and you're right. They changed it to climate change now because nobody can argue the climate does.
Climate change anymore. It's climate disruption. So get it right. Get it right.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, well, Dr. Michael Mann from Penn State, I heard Scott Pruitt 2 weeks ago was saying, how arrogant is it for us to assume that we know what the ideal temperature is?
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, if you look in history, the ideal temperature is warmer than what it is now.
Right.
Civilizations have always flourished. And Michael Mann came back and he said, well, the ideal temperature is what it was before we started adding CO2 to the atmosphere.
Wow.
That would put us squarely in the middle of the Little Ice Age. We know that was horrific. That would be really, really bad. And, if we look at the long term and we talk about predictions, actually one of my favorite quotes is from Yogi Berra. He says, making predictions is really tough, especially about the future. That's a typical Yogi Berra right there.
Absolutely. It's Greg Wrightstone. He's written a book. It's called Inconvenient Facts. Many times when I have somebody on about climate change, climate disruption, global warming, whatever, I get reaction from my listeners and my viewers, and they say, I just need some references. I just need a website. I just need a book. I just need something because my left-leaning uncle won't shut up about how I'm ruining the atmosphere because I dared buy an 8-cylinder vehicle. Or if I cut my lawn on Sunday afternoon at 3, I'm somehow killing, the amoebas that we need to produce something in lower Manhattan or in Luxembourg. So they just want something they can grab a hold of, something tangible that's referenced, and I think this is it. So is that the reaction that you're getting? Finally, I have something in my hand I can show to these people and tell them, read the book, get back to me with questions.
Yes, absolutely. This book has been referenced. You don't know how many people have told me this needs to be in every library and every school in the United States. And I've had people going out and buying 80 and 100 books just to hand out to people. And I've had a number of grandparents bought one for each of their kids and grandkids. And so I think it's being a game changer. In fact, Ryan Zinke, the Secretary of the Interior, I just got a handwritten note back thanking me and quoting from the book. So it's getting in the hands of the right people. And
when An Inconvenient Truth came out, though, they were showing this film in schools, in public schools across the country, as fact. I think they've stopped doing that because 17 of the 19 facts he has in there are debunked now. But is there any sort of traction, any sort of promise that this will start showing up in schools? Do you think that they would still reject it because the schools generally are run by the left?
Yeah, I don't. I could see it being in Christian schools or privately run schools. Sure, I think I could see that, but we're still dominated by the left wing in the schools. Can I tell you a story about? Sure. I just spoke in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, in eastern Pennsylvania a few weeks ago. history professor from the local college was there, and he started blasting me on social media after the talk and really taking me down. And I found out his email address, sent him an email. I said, you know what, I'll come out and I'll speak to you and your class, tear me apart afterwards, rip me apart, tell me what I'm wrong about. He got back and he said, I no sooner have you come out and talk to my class as I would someone representing the theory of flat earth. This is where it gets good. This is where it gets good. And he said, I don't want my students exposed to this kind of science. This kind of science.
Wow.
Really? He couldn't find anything wrong that I said. He just didn't want them hearing the inconvenient facts that I reveal.
We don't want to indoctrinate our children with the truth. We want to indoctrinate them with what we want them to know. It's Greg Wrightstone. He's got a book out called Inconvenient Facts. Go to inconvenientfacts.xyz. Go and get the book right now. Last question for you, and this is a very interesting conversation. Hopefully we can do it again. The last question has to be, in your mind, and in your very well-educated on this topic mind, why are the Bill Nyes and the Al Gores and the United Nations, why are these sorts of people and entities so vehemently pushing that I believe this garbage we can so easily debunk? What do they get out of it? What's the end game here?
Yeah. It almost sometimes when we talk about this, people say, oh, you got to be wearing a tinfoil hat. But the truth is, these are facts from NASA and NOAA, and I don't know. I start out in the book with a quote from H.L. Mencken. He references imaginary hobgoblins of alarm that need to be thrown out by the governments to have them impose necessarily harmful regulations and laws on the population. So we need the population to be alarmed, to have things like the Paris Climate Accord that would economically hurt the United States and the West. And just harmful. But it's a good question.
Well, to you, is it about power control, regulation, and maybe fining or taxing us?
Yeah, this is about increasing regulation, increasing taxes. It's a loss of our freedoms. They can impose the control over us. And I think the overall agenda is an anti-capitalist, anti-free market agenda.
And generally speaking, anti-United States agenda. If you looked at the Paris Accords, nobody had to do anything for 30 years except us. We had to change everything, how we do business. China doesn't have to change a thing for 30 years. None of that made any sense.
An important report was just released yesterday by the U.S. Congress about the Russian interference in the pro-environmental movement. Turns out they've spent huge amounts of money on social media to promote, keep it in the ground, to promote anti-pipeline, to promote anti-fossil fuels from the environmental left-wing groups. So these guys, they're unwitting dupes teaming with the Russians to roll us back, because the Russians don't want us to continue the shale revolution and export gas to Europe.
It's killing their oil industry.
It's killing, and mainly their gas industry.
Yeah.
The oil industry is being hurt terribly. That's their biggest source of hard currency, but they ship a lot of gas to Europe. And they don't want this.
Such great information. In fact, great inconvenient facts. See what I did there? Inconvenientfacts.xyz. His name is Gregory R. Wrightstone. I want you to go and get this book, get a few copies, and hand it out to people, especially that uncle that gives you a hard time at Thanksgiving. Greg, thanks a million. Let's talk again.
All right, go buy my book.
Absolutely. We're back after this on the Joe Pag Show. Stay here.